Dave.
Oh, let me unmute. What's going on, brother?
Hey, long time no see. I saw, by the way, that so Dave Smith, I should say, is a comedian, a podcaster. He's the host of something called Part of the Problem, which I actually just saw. I haven't watched it, but I just saw somebody tweet out some discussion that you just had on the show about Kamala Harris's horrifying record as a prosecutor and as Attorney General in California. That's the stuff that up until about 6 months ago was her big selling point. You know, how tough on crime she was.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the winds have shifted a little bit since then. But I should also say that Dave has had me on Part of the Problem twice. The second time was to debate Gene Epstein about capitalism and socialism, and I felt okay about how that went. But the first time was to debate Dave himself about taxation, and that I think was the approximate on my end. I think that was the approximate debate equivalent of like some like horrific set that a comedian bombs that like they're going to remember for the next 10 years, because basically. Other than a couple of YouTube randos, the first one of those that I'd done, and I think I basically treated it like I was having a classroom discussion in a philosophy seminar, and you could sort of like play with examples and lead people to the point in a really roundabout way. When it's a format where if you don't like get to the fucking point, most people are gonna tune out. So that's. Despite that being the site of a great embarrassment, I always enjoy talking to Dave about this stuff. Certainly that that we disagree about. Which we are, don't worry, going to get to. But also about things where there is more of a coming together between libertarians and leftists. And I want to get into some of that. And I also want, I know this is a lot, for half an hour. We'll see how much happens, right? But I also want to get into some stuff about comedy a little bit. And I think a good way to start the last two subjects, right? The comedy and and some of the stuff that might actually be areas of agreement. Would be thinking about something that happened last year that I've thought about many times since then. It always like amazes me when I think back to it, which is that Louis C.K., who is a extremely talented comedian who made some bad decisions about masturbation. That was the core of the issue there. That apparently he had a habit of asking female comedians if they were okay with it if he masturbated in front of them, and then sometimes they would say yes because they didn't think he was serious, right? Like they just figured it was a gag, and then he'd actually do it. And I think that CK, whatever else you think about that, I think CK himself would say now, like, that's not something he would recommend that anybody do. But because of this, right, Louis C.K. is, seems to be like a pretty straight down the line liberal politically as far as I can tell. And he tried to give some money months ago. I guess I said last year. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure how many months ago, but he tried to give some money to the Joe Biden campaign. And the Biden campaign gave it back. Right. So this is a campaign and a politician who's taken all kinds of money over the decades from like credit card companies in his home state, who's in charge of regulating and just all kinds of like sketchy figures, and apparently has never thought twice about it. But this crossed the line. Right. So to be clear about this, the worst thing Joe Biden's ever done, there's some competition. But like one thing that comes to my mind, one thing that I think is surely in the top 5 worst things that he ever did was being one of the main Democrats pushing for the invasion of Iraq, which led to over 1 million people dying. And the worst things that Louis C.K. has done all seem to involve masturbation. And that doesn't seem as bad.
Well, okay, so I completely agree with the spirit of what you're saying. By the way, just a quick note: when I came into the Zoom conversation, it was when you had your last guest. It was when all three of you were here, and I swear, the moment I came into was your guest was saying, "We really have to talk about Adolf's theory about race and medicine." And I was like, whoa, what has happened to Ben Burgis since the last time we talked? This is not the show I was expecting at all. But about a
Yeah.
second later, I
Different
realized
Adolf.
this was not my Jew spidey senses were tingling up. Like, whoa, dude, I don't think we should talk about that at all. Okay, this sounds not nearly as bad.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
say this: Louis's actual worst, at least from what I heard of the
Mm,
incidents, the
mm,
worst one didn't involve masturbation, at least to me. The worst one I heard of was he was on set somewhere working, and he asked one of the female employees that like working on the show with him if they would watch him masturbate, and they were like, no. And he was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. And then that was it. And that was, to me, like even creepier than asking female comedians when you're
yeah,
back at
because
your
this is somebody
hotel.
who's maybe actually kind of working for him.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're at work. It's not like
yeah,
in a
yeah,
social environment. So that one was really
yeah.
weird. But I do think your point is a really important one, and it's a really important one, particularly for the kind of woke strain
Mm,
of strand of the left, which is what I personally have a lot more respect for a leftist like you, like the more or less the Bernie Sanders kind of wing
mm,
of leftists, than I do about with the kind of outrage,
mm,
I don't know, like authoritarian PC, for whatever
mm.
word you want to call it. But it's like, okay, you can be outraged at Louis C.K. and that's fine, but you have to kind of have a hierarchy of outrage. I know leftists don't like hierarchies, but in this sense, I think it's a justifiable one. And you have to, so if somebody, right, like the people so you can take money from Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or credit card companies or, JP Morgan Chase or any of this, but you can't take money from Louis C.K. Do we not see a little bit of a problem? Even if you think what Louis did was wrong, he does not have, as you pointed out, millions of corpses on his record, and I'm sure that if there was a John McCain fund or something like
Right,
that,
right,
they'd
right,
have
right,
no
right.
problem taking that money from him.